I am obviously a marketer, but when I was thinking about why this session is so important, I was just thinking about how sales people and sales managers have to deal with so many moving pieces. And it's actually incredibly difficult to keep the CRM up to date. And they kind of, sales people and SDRs both sit in this really challenging position of they could not succeed without automation, but also personalization is so important. So how do you like find that middle ground of you're personalizing things, but also it's automated enough that you can actually succeed and follow up enough times? And obviously the business impact of sales and SDRs going well is
There's that too. And we talked about with Yamini, it's like having the unified customer view and the idea that you're going to be marketing through the entire journey, not just to generate the lead, but also while they're in pipeline, you're going to be doing webinars with them or sending other touch points. Like having all of that activity living in one place is really powerful.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. I'll let you do the intros to the sales session now.
Yeah, great. We're going to be joined by Aircall, Grain, and PandaDoc. Specifically, we have Molly from Aircall, Mike from Grain, and Scott from PandaDoc, and Kyle Jepson from HubSpot will be helping us moderate. So actually, we can just dive into the panel discussion. We're going to do a quick panel, just like with the marketing session, and then we're going to have everyone show us how their tools integrate into HubSpot and the powerful automations, reports, lists, etc., that can come from that. Take it over, Kyle.
All right. Thanks so much. Good to be here. All right. I'm oriented now. Molly, Mike, good to have you here. Super excited to talk about some sales things. We've had a lot of great energy in the session so far. Thank you all for being here. I'm watching you in the chat. Very active group. Very excited for this. Let's get right down to it. Let's talk about sales stuff. Molly, I think you're going first with Aircall. You want to take it away?
Of course. Can everyone hear me all right?
I can hear you.
Perfect. All right, then I'm just going to go straight into the screen share as to maintain that momentum from Taylor's amazing session. So before we jump in, I just wanted to give a quick intro to Aircall. So Aircall is HubSpot's #1 telephony partner. And especially when it comes to the sales side, we really come in when it comes to supporting teams on that sales and marketing alignment piece, but also that sales efficiency piece. Really, the use case that we're working with today is one that we actually deal with quite often internally as well. And it's a very common one that we hear from sales and marketing leaders, which is that webinar. And then how do we make sure that we're following up with these leads in an efficient way, making sure none of those leads are falling through the cracks, but also how do we ensure that every single conversation that these SDRs are having with these leads are very much personalized. So if we look at our screen here, let's say I am an SDR and we've hosted this amazing webinar. I've had this list that has been handed over to me from the marketing team. We're obviously not working with the same HubSpot demo portal, so I don't have the exact filters that Taylor may have shown. But essentially, let's assume that this is a list that's been pulled from the Wistia webinar, high intent MQLs. These people have attended, they stuck around for the entire webinar. We can really assume that there's intent here. So as an SDR, my responsibility or my tasks for today might be to go through this entire list of leads, give them a call back, see if we can continue nurturing these leads, see if we can then create this into a qualified lead that's ready for a demo to then move on to our AEs who can obviously close this deal. Now, the first piece right here is, as you can see, we've got this list of contacts. What I would do is click into the Aircall extension right here. So what it's done is all phone numbers. Oh, is my connection all right?
Hi. You're getting a little choppy.
I think we just lost you with the power dialer.
Oh, no. No. Okay. Am I back now?
Okay. I think you are here now.
Okay. Okay.
You're
Great.
back.
So what we're going to do is what the power dialer has done is it's picked up all the numbers on this list right here. We're then going to move this over to our power dialer on the Aircall app right here. I'm going to click on this button and I'm going to hope that this does not cut off the internet. I'm petrified. So we've made it. We've made it. And now what it's done is it's pulled in all of these contacts and the phone numbers that I have to go through into our power dialer here. So as an SDR, I'm going to start the session. And now really the idea of the Aircall power dialer is, again, we're maximizing efficiency because we're going through each of the calls one by one. Obviously, SDRs have hundreds of calls to do per day. They don't have time to be moving on to the next phone call. Each of them click to dial. What it's going to do is power through those sessions. We're going to start the session now. I'm going to call out of my mobile number to ensure a higher connect rate. And this call is now coming through. What I'll also do is open up the contact record on HubSpot.
Wow, that's slick.
Now, I'm gonna, as you can see, immediately, as soon as we start dialing, we can open up the contact record. This comes in really handy when it comes to, again, personalizing those conversations. I have all the previous engagements with that particular lead or contact. Here is probably where you would also see that they've engaged with Wistia content. Now I'm having this conversation and it's a great call. It's going really well. And I'm actually getting to do some discovery, some qualification notes that I'll jot down here. And by the end of the call, it's a great Tuesday. They want to book a demo. So what I will do at this point is I'll open up the tags here and I will tag it qualified create deal. And on top of that, they've asked me for some more information and collateral on Sales Hub. So I'll also tag it Sales Hub Nurture. Great. So we're going to end this conversation here. Just going to pause power dialer. That call has ended. Now, what those tags are going to do is we've built out this workflow right here where those Aircall tags are actually contact properties that function as a contact enrollment trigger. So because I tag that call qualified create deal and nurture Sales Hub, what it's going to do is that's going to update the lead status to open deal. It's going to rotate that contact within a team of AEs round robin. It's going to create a deal on HubSpot, then assign it to that new AE owner and send them a notification saying, hey, this deal's been assigned to you. And to top it all off, you might also send a follow-up email to that particular prospect saying, hey, thanks for the chat just now. You're going to receive a calendar invite very soon. On top of that, because they've asked for some more collateral, we might enroll them into a nurture campaign about, Sales Hub. Now, this is all stuff that when you do manually, obviously after every call, it's going to take maybe 3 to 5 minutes to do. And when your SDRs are going through hundreds of calls per day, they simply don't have the time for that. Now, in this case, in this example, obviously it was a very positive call, booked a demo. However, most of these calls will actually be bad timing or maybe not interested or call me back in 3 months, in which case, again, even creating tasks for those take time. So you might even tag it if it was, hey, I'm interested, but why don't you call me back in 3 months? That's when our contract is up. Then you might tag it, call back 3 months, which might create a task that specifically has a due date of 3 months later. So really, again, it's about driving sales efficiency so that you can enable your sales team to make it effortless for them to go after those leads, make sure they're converting all the leads into deals or qualifying them out and supporting them through that infrastructure.
And not only efficiency, but also personalization, because with all these integrations that we're talking about, the SDR can see that they just attended the webinar. And so I feels like the right things are scalable and automatable. And then the things that you need to think about and the personalization that needs to happen can also happen, which is really that, like, people's minds are being blown in the chat. I'm not sure if you noticed, but I feel like that's the magic of it all.
Amazing. And of course, after the call, again, about having that customer data so that when we have a conversation with this prospect in the future, there's that much more context. Any call that's been made through Aircall will be logged automatically. Any notes you've taken, any tags you've used, the call recording, and especially with Aircall AI, what it'll do is it'll even summarize the call and sync it into the HubSpot call log. Mine was muted, so it won't do that now. But again, this is to ensure that when we're having future conversations and we're continuing to nurture this lead, we're going to be making sure that we're supporting the teams and allowing them to do that. Now, just lastly, the last point would be the cherry on top is the reporting side. As a manager, if you're trying to keep track of how your SDRs are doing on their call volumes, what's the time to first contact when it comes to who's getting to these leads while they're still red hot, who's taking much longer, who's having the longest talk time, all of that can also be built out on HubSpot so that you're storing all of that data in your single source of truth and you're contextualizing that call activity in the broader context of your pipeline and revenue metrics.
Amazing. As Chantal said, people are loving it in the chat. If anyone has any questions for Molly, anything you want to know, we do have a couple minutes here for questions before we move to the next section. Also, Molly, don't run too far away because we will have a panel discussion after the other demos. But this is incredible. It's so smooth, so powerful, automating so many things. And because it's all in HubSpot, it's connected to all your other HubSpot stuff.
Absolutely.
It's a great place to be. Mostly you're just getting love in the chat. Not a lot of questions. I think you've left them speechless. So we will go ahead and move along to Mike from Grain to talk about what comes next.
Awesome. Nice to be here and meet everybody. My name is Mike. I started Grain in 2018. And how's the world changed since then? So what Grain is, we are a video meeting recording, transcription, and AI analysis platform that really makes it easy to remove all the monotonous busy work that's associated with managing a pipeline and really deeply understanding customers, and also managing a team and being able to coach and improve, I would say, efficiency of adherence to playbooks. And I'd say the hero object of Grain that fits into the theme of this has always been about advocating and creating ease of advocating for the voice of the customer and being able to identify that and unlock it. And all the AI improvements that we've made, I would say, over the last 18 months have really resulted, I would say, in that first and foremost, because you close more deals and you grow more revenue when ultimately the customer is at the center. And Grain makes it a lot easier to understand your customers when every conversation ends up being recorded and shared amongst the team. And so what I'm going to be showing today is I would say, a pretty specific workflow around that. Really, our workflow begins where Molly's ended in terms of this prospect being qualified and ready to talk to an AE, which usually will end up happening more on Zoom or Meet or Teams. And that's where Grain comes in. And so Grain actually has a very smooth integration with Aircall. They're an amazing partner that we work with. And so I'm going to share my screen, and that's where the demo is going to begin. What we'll notice first of all is that an account that we made up for this is Alex Johnson. We had a call here with Alex Johnson. And when that was completed in Aircall, it was imported into Grain. So look at that in Grain. So this is actually an Aircall generated call. We generate the transcript as well, and we'll do some basic meeting notes on top of it. And so what this allows us to do is, in the context of Grain or in the context of Aircall or in the context of HubSpot, be able to have this continual view of the customer in a way that gives us a sense of what has happened, what did they want, what are the next steps, for example. And so that's actually where we're going to kick off from here, is that Grain has analyzed the transcript and identified that the next step is a Zoom meeting with Alex at 8 a.m. So one of the nice things about Grain and HubSpot is that we have a deep integration. So we matched the phone number of the contact that was imported from Aircall. And so now I can view that contact, and I got back to that same record I was looking at just a moment ago. And the activities associated with Alex are here in HubSpot. And in particular, I've gone ahead and I've scheduled this meeting that is going to be happening here with Alex on Thursday. Let's go ahead and skip ahead into Grain, and we'll go to our calendar. And even though it's scheduled for Thursday, I actually kicked off this call a moment ago. and it is live in the background. So this is Grain joining the call, and it is creating a live transcript. So this is the desktop application. We'll actually skip and just do it here on the web. So this is the live transcript that I've been running for the past 15 minutes or so. And what this allows someone to do is to leave comments at specific moments of "this is great, let's review it later," and turn a conversation into a collaboration with the team where you can create threads around very specific moments, and you're not left being like, oh, go watch that one call, but instead can have collaboration around specific moments, or being able to go through and create highlight clips around specific parts of the call of summary of the concern. During the in the post hoc, this is actually, these are auto titled using generative AI. We're just working on doing that live right now. So this is an example of the type of experience you'd have during the call of being able to flag moments or comment. Most of this collaboration tends to actually happen after the call, but it can be done live. And skipping forward to a meeting that's actually been completed, we'll look at an example of a meeting that has been finished. And so one of the cool parts of Grain is that you can really easily create different templates and run those templates across your calls. And then it will summarize the notes to be exactly what you want. And so in this case, we're following a MEDPIC methodology, which is actually a custom template that I made. And we have some out of the box ones, but if we go to edit template, is I identified all these prompts that were representative of how we define MEDPIC at Grain for metric, economic buyer, et cetera. And then it will generate notes that is pretty representative across this one call around the criteria of the metrics and the economic buyer, the decision criteria is around the technical, economic, and relationship, the decision process that needs to be followed. Paper process, it just says, didn't really explicitly, which you wouldn't expect in the first call. Implicated, pain, champion, and competition as defined by the MEDPIC framework. It's not just the actual competitors, but also the economic resources that you're in competition with.
That is wild.
I know, my mind is absolutely blown. And it's sick that you can customize it, whether you use
that is so
MEDPIC
cool.
or whatever methodology. Yeah.
I love the enthusiasm. I actually had the exact same reaction when I applied this template, and I, not to overly hype it up, but there's one more thing that I'll show you about that applies across all of the calls that I'll show in a moment, that was a truly mind-blowing moment for me recently when we got it live and working. So thanks for that enthusiasm. I love that. One more thing that's probably worth showing is that allows you to customize these workflows around what I wanted to finish showing was that there's a deep integration with HubSpot that happens completely automatically, so that these notes and they get pushed as notes, or you can add them as the description in your meeting logs. So you can choose either one. Those get pushed automatically here to the activities as notes in HubSpot. So you don't have to copy or paste or do anything manually, which has been super cool and really powerful.
As a marketer, I have to say, like, there were times a previous company of mine used Gong plus Salesforce, and this stuff was not automatically sent over to the CRM. And so if a marketing leader or a sales leader is attempting to get a sense of how accurate pipeline forecasts are, it's incredibly hard unless you have one or two AEs that actually copy paste everything over and no one else does. So then you really can't tell actually how good a deal is. But this is really awesome.
No, thanks for sharing that. And I think I'll stop sharing my screen for a moment. We've seen enthusiasm both on I would say the rep side, because nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to go in and manually update and manually change these notes of these fields, and being able to not just have it be a generic output that goes in there, but actually representative of the discovery methodology that we use or the questions that we care about, and being able to fully customize those and turn them into a workflow that just happens automatically has not only benefits for the person not having to do the manual admin work, but has cascading impact for marketing, for customer success, for product, and obviously the rest of the sales team and sales management as well. So totally agree with that.
Yeah, I would love to talk more about how are people using the power of HubSpot to leverage this data that's automatically being piped in. I'd also be curious, Kyle, if you have seen anyone doing creative things like this in HubSpot. But Mike, from your perspective, what are the things that people should build, whether it's reports or lists or workflows, based on all of that data from Grain that's going into HubSpot?
There's so much, like, the world is your oyster, right? There's so much opportunity, and it's very cool because it's all burgeoning. Because I feel like the vision is very similar to what Yamani said, is it's all about proactive, and it's like the color TV, right? You stopped asking for color on when you bought a TV. It just, everything started to be in color. And that's the exact same thing with AI around just like these experiences of what in a couple of years, right now we're mind blown about how good AI can and save us so much time in the specific formats that we care about. But very soon it's going to be just like status quo, and it's be business as usual. But I'm actually going to dive back in, and we'll run through one very specific workflow, and we can open it up to some other examples here at the end. But I think that's exactly what the real power is, being able to not just save me admin work, but trigger intelligently in a customized way that's actually representative of what I want, workflows and time-saving effort based on the intelligence that's starting to be piped in. So
yeah, Brian in the chat says this is a great tool to help with sales to CS handoffs. And I think that
totally
is a great thing to think about, because regardless of how good or bad your sales reps, or in some cases bad or worse they are at taking notes and writing things down, they may be able to keep things straight in their own mind. But when it comes time to communicate a person's context to another team member, that is sometimes very difficult. And to have all this stuff organized so completely separate from all the cool automation and other tool-based things you can do just for human-to-human interaction and teamwork and collaboration and alignment and all those things, this is really powerful.
Totally agree. And thanks for sharing that. It's not part of the demo, but I was just going over some designs yesterday about a roll-up deliverable. So at the handoff point, being able to pull all of those, I'd say, critical moments that have happened in a kind of handoff position, so that you don't have to even go. And because it's nice that it's all there. If I wanted to click in and I wanted to watch all 12 calls, I don't have to like really do that. I can read the AI notes, but even that is really more work than what I want. I want that roll-up. And so that we're actually in the middle of working on that right now, but that's absolutely where these things are going. And I'll actually show one roll-up workflow that is live here in a moment. So diving back in, and an example is we have the context window, and I can ask something like, say maybe it wasn't part of my notes templates, but I just want to ask ad hoc, what is the customer's most likely objection to purchasing the product, even though I can't spell. And Grain, you can literally ask anything you want of the context window of the transcript, and then be able to get that information and add it to your notes, or being able to push workflows off of it. It might be struggling because I misspelled customer so bad. What is the customer's most likely objection to purchasing the product? And then that will generate an output. So here we go. The customer's most likely objection to purchasing the product is related to compliance and security, particularly regarding the use of AI and potential data exposure. So I can either add that prompt to the template, as if I always wanted to ask this, or I can just add it to my notes, or copy and paste it and send it in an email, or put it in a document or whatever. So I'm going to add it to my notes in this case. Shows up down here. And then I can push these to Slack or HubSpot, or obviously, and I can manually push updates, but obviously the template, as soon as the call ends, will run automatically.
I'm sure people got it, but this is really powerful, because like call transcription, this is a thing that's existed for a long time, right? But if you want to know someone's objection and it's a long call transcript, you're going to like Command F, and you're going to hope they said the literal word objection, right? And like, how often do they? It never, right? Whereas
exactly.
to ask AI to analyze it and to say what sorts of things came up and summarize that in a paragraph, that's incredibly powerful.
It really, I started to take it for granted of this is just normal now, but it really isn't. We're totally in the early innings. And I think the thing I'm going to show next, which is towards the end of this demo, is, so we have this enrichment data. And so I'm going to open this deal in HubSpot. And Grain actually has the ability to add, we add custom Grain properties. So you can tailor what properties are viewed at your deal level. So at the deal level, what we've done is actually create, every time there's a new activity, right now it's just off of call activity, but in the future we'll also include email or continued Aircall and support or anything else. But this information is actually the aggregation of all, in this case, 12 calls that have happened, and it is updated to the current status of Medic. Actually, we have MedPick is what we've got in here, which is super interesting because even as I was playing around with this, paper process, for example, didn't come up until the 10th call when it was ready to close. And after every meeting, we're going through and we're updating this, and we're identifying if there was a champion at the beginning and if that champion is now a little bit different. And it turns out in this case that the champion did switch on the last call, and that's being summarized here in this information with easy access. And I feel like it's pretty representative of not just the, I would say, utility at one individual deal, but a lot of the powering of workflows based on an AI assessment of using a qualification framework like Medic or MedPick or Spiced or any other framework that is really not just on one call. It's supposed to be representative of diagnostic of why it's going to close, or forecasting of how likely it is to close, or diagnostic of why it's at risk of not closing. And even if, say, we don't close, being able to go back and look at this summary of how good we were and what the actual content was around this discovery methodology that's supposed to be representative of how the deal is doing. And there's actually a lot that we're doing in product to try to take these signals and bring it into a deals dashboard that shows all of the HubSpot deals, et cetera. I think the last thing worth showing is that we actually we have a concept called at risk, which is a culmination of the Medic qualification, some activity. And so there's a little bit of Gen AI, a little bit of predictive AI to ultimately have a flag that says that it's at risk, a deal is at risk. And if a deal is flagged as at risk, this is an example of a report where we're like looking at deals that are at risk by stage. So this is in deal progressing. Here's contract negotiation. So even though there's a deal that's worth 10,000, it's in contract negotiation, it's been flagged as at risk. And that at the management level makes it a lot easier to be able to know where to focus and where to dive in. And then this at risk will change dynamically as Grain updates if it's at risk based on the actual content of the calls, not just the activity. The fact that it happened is part of it, but the true power of this at risk flag is the content of what is actually said in these calls and whether it's representative of being on track or being truly at risk. In this case, so I actually was reading that wrong. So at risk is false. So this pipeline is healthy. And this is the place where I actually really want to dive in, is on this one individual deal. And the last thing I want to share as well is being able to trigger a workflow off of this at risk. So this workflow is a pretty basic notification to where what we want is we want to engage with these deals if they're at risk, and being able to trigger and send a Slack notification about a particular deal that is at risk and then updating it and saying that it is no longer at risk is just an example of one type of workflow that can be triggered. But I would say very similar to what Molly was sharing, there's all sorts of workflows that you can create based on the content and status of those qualification fields, and any of the new ones that we'll be adding around. Has the economic buyer been identified? Who is that person? Make an assignment to a particular rep. If the contract value is moved up during a particular meeting, the sky really is the limit in terms of where these things are going. But that's where my demo ends, is at the point where we've now successfully, it's no longer at risk. We're in a place where we're moving the stage to negotiation. And happy to answer any questions before Scott talks about the closing process and the integration between PandaDoc and HubSpot.
Yeah, for sure. Mike, I think you've made a lot of friends in the chat. Sounds like at least Adam and Ryan would love to just hang out with you all day and let you demo all the parts of Grain. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat.
Yeah, while we're waiting for questions too, I just want to take this opportunity to reorient us where we are in the sort of customer journey today. What I love about everything we were just seeing from Grain is that you have all of that amazing information piping into HubSpot automatically, but it's also alongside what partners do that company work with, and what webinar did they attend from Wistia, and what did the SDR talk to them about using Aircall. And then you're working this deal and it's ready to close. And it will make the success handoff so much better with all of that context automatically in HubSpot. It looks like we don't have any questions actually. So I think, Scott, if you're ready, you can take it away.
Perfect. Appreciate that. As I'm sharing my screen here, the MedPick notes, especially for me as an SE leader, are awesome because a lot of times it's hard to get all that information out of your AE.
Mm-hmm.
And so having that all like pulled right into HubSpot as your source of truth is really stellar for me. We have Gong, but it's like extra clicks to get there. You always have to log in, get through Octane, so layers. And so
Yeah, and you might have to Slack the AE to be like, hey, just to confirm, is this good? Are you what's the deal? It's like
that
as
it
we
is.
were working on this, I actually went to the account owner for one that I was testing it on, and I was trying to get like it out of his head and manually enter what the medpic status was, and it was like, I don't know, maybe 20-30% of the way there, because it's pretty solid in his mind, but it hasn't been perfectly documented. There's been 12 calls, what happened when and where. And what's crazy is the AI can just process so much information that it's actually far more accurate than trying to do it manually. It really was pretty mind-blowing. So appreciate that, Scott.
Yeah, no, awesome. And so on our side, PandaDoc, we are a document automation and e-sign platform. And so really it's HubSpot is the source of truth for all of your customer engagements and what's going on. PandaDoc is, we want to be that for the actual documents themselves. And as we're following along this path, right, we have Acme Industries here and Alex, who we're selling to. As we've gone through this process, right, we identified with Grain that there was a need for some security information to be sent. And as far as this process, on the deal record here, I can see a few things have already happened with PandaDoc. In this case, we have some automation that's already happened in the back. So as soon as a customer comes through and we've identified that they've been bought in, our next stage normally is to send an NDA. Maybe they have a request for a SOC 2 report. And so we want to remove that burden from the AEs and the sellers themselves. And so in the background, we've already know that Alex is our signer, and we've sent and signed an NDA, and that's all associated to our deal in our accounts and all tracked within HubSpot as your initial source of truth. And so whether this process is automated in the background or something that's user driven, it's something that can go through HubSpot as your single source of truth. So with PandaDoc here, if we pop over into our side, everything starts within a template. And so unlike a lot of platforms out there, it is a what you get editor. And so I can easily click in and edit and drag anything I want, even Control Z out of that and bring it back to where we were to start with. But the core elements as we talk about our HubSpot integration is the ability to merge data seamlessly and use that as your source of truth. And so as we're talking about, we want to customize what we want our reps to be able to customize. We want to pre-fill the information that we already know. And we want to then also restrict them from editing the things we don't want our sellers to edit. Because you know that the seller is not the only person involved with this deal. As you're going through, there's legal, who's already approved terms and conditions. There's your RevOps, who needs everything to match inside of your CRM. And so all of that is important to have controls over. And so inside of PandaDoc, on our right-hand side, we have these content blocks that allow you to build the actual contents itself. If I keep on here, for us, that high level is what you get, no code, real-time tracking. And then the final piece here is really pulling in that customized content on the fly. And so with PandaDoc, the real highlight feature for us is our smart content that can either allow your sellers to pick and choose things like a case study or pre-fill the content for terms and conditions, something that might be related to T's and C's that are specific to a country that you're selling in. We have a template set up, but really it's all about how easy it is for our seller to actually generate and send that data. So inside of HubSpot, we have a deal record. We have Alex as our recipients. We have some of our initial line items. In this case, it's our pro plan. We're going in knowing it's 13 seats. And then we already have a contract start date over here on the other side. And so as we're creating and sending this contract, we're going to make sure that HubSpot is in sync at every stage of that deal. So regardless of what happens inside of PandaDoc and the changes that happen in the proposal, we want to reduce that lift on the actual seller so they don't have to do double entry inside of their CRM and maintain that as the source of truth. So I'll show you how we do that. On the right-hand side, we see our PandaDoc widget. We'll just go through a quick create document workflow. This does launch you a window into PandaDoc, allowing you to select those templates. In this case, it's my HubSpot sales proposal. Alex is pulled in as my client, and I'm put in as the sender. We like to joke that green means go, and all of the buttons for your reps to create and send a document are all green. Happens to be the same color as cash. Don't know if that was intended or not, but it is what it is. So as this document's created, now it's a child from that parent template. Anything that's changed here isn't going to affect that template or anyone else's documents. And so if I scroll down to these case studies, I can then pick and choose what to include. It's going to be pulled in from our content library. It's going to honor the theme and the fonts from your proposal template so that everything looks seamless. Quick plug as well, we do integrate with Wistia, and you can embed videos right within inside of PandaDoc. And then the final piece, as far as we're quoting, is our quote block itself. And so in this case, my pro plan and that onboarding package have been pulled in, but I also have some add-ons here. And so one of the things that makes PandaDoc unique within the e-sign market is that our documents are live online. They're not a PDF, it's not. And so I haven't generated in this Word, I haven't copy and pasted its things and then uploaded that into another e-sign platform. And so as I make changes, I can click into my quote block. And in this case, maybe I actually learned this is a 20 user deal and I'm going to be offering them a 20% discount for that. I can make those changes on the fly. And then the add-ons down here as well, they're optional for my user. And so maybe I want to include my dedicated support. I can have an existing volume-based threshold. So if they want to choose and add more hours, that's all going to honor that pricing within the catalog itself and then be reflected back into HubSpot automatically. So as I save this quote, I made some fun modifications. And then I have my actual signature blocks themselves. And so you can see that there is specific content here that is locked. And so our merge variables, those yellow fields, did pull in from HubSpot. But as a user, I have to go to an admin or legal to request changes to specific contract languages that I shouldn't need to change. And then you do see that there's our signature fields and our start date that are assigned to that end user, that signer. And the last thing that we have here is some terms and conditions. And so in this case, those deal properties that are passed across all the way from the company into PandaDoc dictate what terms and conditions this template has. And so as a seller, I don't have to worry about picking the right template. I don't have to worry about adding there. The right content is going to be there every time. And then the last piece here, back to the green buttons, we then get to send this to our clients. And so we can generate a link, we can send emails or text messages, and then have Alex sign this. And so this kind of brings you all the way through that initial generation of the document, merging your data from your deal as your source of truth. If I load this, that then gives me that signature recipient view that they're going to see in PandaDoc. But more importantly, if I pop back over to my deal, and then gotta love live demos, we can see that the deal stage has already been updated. And so we've associated this new proposal, we've updated the stage as this happens. And then from Alex here, he just has to follow his call to actions right down to the bottom. But my add-ons themselves, I can actually opt into my cloud storage. Maybe I actually want to be generous and get 1,000 gigs here, and that will be updated in live time. And maybe my start date actually is going to be the end of the month. So I can update that, draw type, or upload my signature and finalize this document. So this phase, we are a standard electronic signature in the market that is going to generate and be valid pretty much everywhere in the world. And then it's going to be written back into HubSpot. And so all those changes that you saw just happened, my stage is updated, my deal has moved through, my line items, both the dedicated storage that I opted in for and the changes to my actual discount are all reflected right inside of HubSpot here. And in a moment, PDFs take a little bit longer to render. We're also going to write in that PDF right into your deal records. So at any point, if anyone else needs to go back and see that proposal, they don't have to go chase it down anywhere else. They can see it right within HubSpot as your source of truth. And then same thing with the start date itself that we modified. It's all pulled in. And so really the name of the game is to reduce the lift on the account executives, reduce the risk for human errors, and let sellers do what they're good at, which is sell and not admin work. Yeah.
Love it. I'm wondering if you can share from an integration perspective, like what are the things that get lost if HubSpot and PandaDoc are, or a tool like PandaDoc are not integrated? One example I can think of is like the information on the deal making its way into the proposal, like anything else like that that's missing without the integration.
Yeah, and really it's your source of truth. One thing that as a company, PandaDoc was a startup 7 or 8 years ago. It's like knowing which of your customers have NDAs in place is a very simple one. And so chasing down historical contracts, if you don't have something as a source of truth for that, then it's very difficult to recover from. Same thing is without having the systems synchronized. I don't know about other businesses here, but once you close one an opportunity, if something wasn't right between your contract, your opportunity, and what was invoiced for the customer, that becomes a big headache for so many different teams involved to reopen that and re-invoice a customer. And without integrations that create seamless workflows like that, it just creates headaches at every stage of the teams.
Kyle, I'm curious what you think about that.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. And actually, I'd love to first, just as a side note, Molly, Mike, and Scott, that was incredible. And your timing is spot on. We are like perfectly exactly where we're supposed to be. And you all demoed so many incredible things. Like I'm amazed we fit it into the time we have. If any of you in the chat have questions for any of these three, now is your time. Send them on in. But yeah, I would love to just expand Chantel's question to all three of you. You've showed your tools and just some of the choicest, most wowing features that they have, but they're all connected into HubSpot. And what is the value of that, especially for the prospects themselves? Why is this the right way, the best way to operate? I'd love to hear from each of you if you have thoughts.
I think I'll jump in. I think the thing for me is we evaluate what do we push into HubSpot and what do we pull into Grain from HubSpot. I think the thing that just truly best articulates the differentiated value of having a connected CRM is that even if we were to pull and do as much as we possibly could inside of Grain, it's still just a portion of the customer story. It still is just Grain, for example, is never going to do the webinar pillars.
Sure.
We're not the 400 other integrations that you could do. So I think the power of choosing apps that are specialized but are part of a connected CRM is that you get that full picture in a way that you really can't on each of the kind of tools themselves. And you definitely can't without a connected CRM. So that's one of the things that I feel as a product builder and also as a seller, as a customer advocate, and all these other hats that we wear. So that's something that stood out to me as a result of not just these sessions, but the ones before.
Yeah, Molly, I saw you lowering your mic. You got some thoughts?
I would just want to say, just carrying on from what Mike mentioned about having that full picture, I think when it comes to delivering the level of customer experience that prospects now expect, we can't have anything less than the full picture. It's no longer really acceptable for us to call a prospect or a lead and say, hey, by the way, and go into it with no context. Let's say they are already a customer and you're trying to sign them on an upsell. You are expected to have context if they just reached out to support a few days ago, and you're expected to know what their last engagements with you were. You can't really, I think that is the standard now of just having that context, almost preempting that conversation. So rather than asking them to explain what's your email address or this and that detail, you should be saying, oh, by the way, I saw that you downloaded a recording of this webinar, or I saw you attended, da da da.
Yeah.
And being able to lead the conversation in that way where you feel like you're driving value rather than asking for information, I would say. So that's a full picture piece. And definitely when it comes to sales teams, I think, again, going back to what seems like has been a common theme in all of our topics and demos, is how can we leverage automation to allow sales reps to go back to what, or spend their time doing what they're good at, which is selling and connecting with leads and prospects. And I will say they're very bad at doing anything that is not that as well. And I say that having been in AE, I know one of my weaknesses was, CRM hygiene, making sure I'm actually logging all that information that I know if I'm not logging that, it will bite me in the butt a couple of months later. Yet I just find it so hard when I have another 100 calls to get through today. So how do we ensure that we are delivering to these sales teams a consolidated tech stack that's centralized out of HubSpot, but also you've got all these different app partners that make their lives easier, and it ensures that, again, they're focusing on selling while also helping other teams work with sales teams, so like the CS teams. And from my perspective as a pipe generation team at Aircall, Oftentimes, I'm waiting on A's to qualify my opportunities, and I'm saying, hey, is that qualified yet? And the biggest blocker is they have to fill out spiced in our case, and they're thinking, oh my God, but I have to go back through my notes and manually put all of that in. And I just don't have time for that right now. Can it wait till tomorrow? And from my perspective, getting an opportunity qualified is the same as an AE getting it closed. I want to see it come through. So yeah, how do we leverage automation to help them and help make their lives easier? I think is a big thing.
Yeah, and one thing I'll say, having seen all 3 of your demos now back to back just right now, it's really interesting to think about HubSpot is this customer platform, and we talk about being all in one and everything's in one spot. But the reality is, a lot of times you go to that record and you look at the activities, and it's an endless scroll, right? A million things have happened, and there are a whole bunch of properties. And how do you know what's most important? And watching the flow of you 3 together, right? Aircall puts all that data in there, and there's like the full call recording if you want to sit in it and listen to it. There's a quick summary, and then Grain, you can just ask questions and have a conversation, and it organizes it into categories for you, right? And then when it comes time for the PandaDoc piece, and you're sending the recipient of that doc can give their feedback. No, we're going to change the quantity of this. We're going to remove this thing, and so it's just all the data is there, but you never have to look hard for it. And if the situation changes, it's all adaptive and it's updating over time. And so it really just feels more like it is this interaction of sales rep to prospect. And in the background, all this cool data stuff is happening, but the prospect never feels that, right? They don't feel like notes are being taken about them. They don't feel like they have to re-answer the question more clearly so it can be searched and indexed better, right? The tags are happening automatically, the organization is happening automatically, and everything is just so much smoother than it ever would be otherwise.
Just to add one quick thing to that, and building on the color TV thing, I feel like what the second and I would even say the 5th and 6th innings of this type of work is going to look more like, is I feel like so much of the workflows that we demonstrated and that I've been enabling are really about an individual task, one particular job to be done. And the most exciting thing is when the tools really are designed from the whole workflow in mind. Not just the task to be done, but the whole project to be completed or the deal to be closed. And I feel like the more that each of the individual players in the ecosystem are built from that perspective, there's just so much opportunity to, I would say, inject intelligence, inject the voice of the customer. But those workflows are just way harder to identify unless you are that ICP yourself or you're super in market. And I think that they are emergent as well, based on the kind of enablement of the individual tasks to be done. You start to see how those pieces can be tied together within a Grain-powered workflow. But then when you start to tie that across the entire life cycle from marketing to Aircall to Grain to PandaDoc and beyond, and all of the products, which I think are moving that way, it's just going to be like an insanely new level of seamless that is just almost impossible to even think about what it's going to be like right now, because it's going to be so emergent.
Yeah, that insanely new level of seamless is what we should all be going for. And I think we've gotten to see what it looks like in reality here in these demos. Scott, I want to make sure, did you have any thoughts you want to add to this?
The only main piece here is, if you look back 10 years ago, you had all these platforms who were growing out, and there was like everything under one hood. Right? They were all acquiring these different tools, and you had one ERP system that did everything, and it was all interconnected, but everything sucked throughout every phase, right? It did the thing it needed to do. And so what excites me about the new HubSpot platform and all of their tools coming together is it is one platform that we're getting back to, but we're allowing all of our partners within the ecosystem to do what they really do well, and then integrate together in a seamless manner, right? So I'm excited for the next phase.
Yeah, me too. It's a great thing to be a part of. We are coming up on time here, but there was one question in the chat I wanted to lay at your feet. Jolene asks, are there soon to be available or future updates that will adjust any HubSpot integrations we should keep in mind for customers? So if you have anything about the future you're excited about and want to tease, feel free. But then the other half of this is, or are there any integrations that conflict with your apps and how they integrate? So are there any warnings, best practices, any things to be excited about in the future as people think about pulling Aircall and Grain and PandaDoc into their tech stack? What would you advise?
I can say from a PandaDoc side that there's going to be a pretty big release for us at Inbound as well
Ooh.
with a guided selling workflow. And so that's going to shift the way our integration works and make it even more seamless and integrated into the HubSpot workflow.
I suspect my company will announce things at Inbound also. Molly, were you going to say something?
I was gonna say I would say probably the most exciting updates from Aircall and HubSpot together are more on the service side actually.
Oh,
So I guess it would be more relevant for the next kind of session. But something to keep in mind is now we're able to route calls, inbound calls, depending on various different HubSpot fields. So for example, account owner for that particular contact, you can have when a call comes through the main line, it automatically goes through to the contact owner synced by HubSpot. Again, going back to those personalized experiences, maybe especially for callbacks from prospects, if we're thinking from a sales perspective. But that is probably the one that, in my opinion, is the most exciting.
nice. Mike, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'd say starting with the second one around the conflicts is it's more of it's a word of advice, or I don't know, that as a builder, I would want to know as a consumer, which is when you make a tooling choice around a particular part of the stack, I would make that choice around the momentum of progress that I'm seeing from that company. Because from when it comes to, I would say, meeting recording and intelligence, there's a bunch of different options out there. And I feel like Grain, we want to win because we want to be serving the needs of the customers and moving as fast as possible to be on that cutting edge. And we believe that is the way to win in the market. And so when it comes to those conflicts, like there's a lot of kind of momentum and lock-in that starts to happen around these data sources. And so I think just being conscious about making a choice of connected apps that are moving the fastest is probably the decision criteria I would use. And then when it comes to teasing the future and a little bit of shelling about Grain doing this very thing, it is cross-call intelligence, I would say, is that next kind of frontier of everything that we're pushing on, baked in the context of workflows. So cross-call intelligence when it comes to the MEDDIC criteria for individual deals, for managing a pipeline, for being able to move between stages, for customer insights and being able to identify patterns and themes, for projects that are getting done or completed around customer research for marketing or product or whatever it may be, for account handoffs. That's another kind of like cross-meeting synthesis and roll-ups. And that's where I feel like the next kind of version of power is coming. But you have to have the right tool that's actually capturing that data and that information to be able to get the gains that can come on the other side of that. And I will say that there definitely are like tortoises and hares when it comes to any of these categories that's been presented today of who's staying on that cutting edge. And I would imagine, and I think we've seen that everybody that's participating here today is showing some really cool stuff and are probably, I know I'm betting on Aircall and PandaDoc and Wisty and Reveal horses at Grain.
Amazing. Thank you, three. This has been incredible. The audience has loved it. Audience, thank you for being so warm and friendly. The chat has been awesome and a little unhinged, and I love all the emojis floating up. This has been so much fun. Thank you all for having us, and Chantal, back to you.
Yeah, also welcome, Daniel. Great to have you back. Thank you everyone so much. That was such a fun session.
Thank you, Scott, Molly, Kyle, everybody. Mike, it was awesome to have you all. Whoa, where we are here. What are we?
Here we
2.5 hours in.
Yeah.
1 more hour to go. We're almost finished. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's set the stage a bit. Like what have we talked about so far? What have we seen?
Well, first we had the keynote with Yamini, which was sick, to say the least. Love her.
I won't say anything there. Yeah, but she was great. It was awesome.
Yeah. And you guys talked so much about what does the connected platform actually mean? How has HubSpot transitioned from like just an app all the way to platform with the big ecosystem that they have today? Then we talked about marketing, and we started with, okay, you're doing this partner webinar and you want to invite all of your customers of both partners to this webinar. Yeah. How do you do that? How do you do that within HubSpot? And then we talked about, okay, you have the webinar and you're using Wistia for that, and what is being piped into HubSpot from Wistia and how can you act on that data? And then, we just had the sales session, which was riveting. My mind is blown, honestly. But we worked through, okay, so you get this webinar list from your marketing team and your SDRs are reaching out, and there's all these workflows that can help them know when to follow up with people and can trigger tasks getting created for salespeople and all of these amazing things that would be very manual and hard to do otherwise. And Grain showed us how they can really help streamline the qualification process and use notes from calls, pipe that over to HubSpot to help, whether it's MedPick or Bant, make sure that all of your deals are qualified. And then PandaDoc really just streamlines the proposal and closed won process and takes a lot of the weight off there. So
we really
it's
have covered a
a good
lot.
thing.
It's been
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
The thing I'll say, we're about to bring on Paul and Colette from HubSpot in a moment, but Arrows, one, partially for this event, but in general, we use all of these products. We obviously use HubSpot. We run success there, sales, marketing there. Obviously, we use Arrows, but we use PandaDoc. We signed all the agreements for this event with PandaDoc. We use Grain. We record all of our calls, both sales and success calls with Grain. We use Aircall primarily for sales. Wistia, we host our product demos on there, a lot of our Steeless workflow content on there. And Reveal, we partnered on this event and in general partner with HubSpot using Reveal. And there's stuff even me, like I was blown away. Like we use these tools and I was still blown away by seeing how they all connect. And it's been really awesome. So with that, I'll let you get out of here
Yeah.
and we'll transition to the success session.